like a molten piece of cheese, because well, it's not the most pretty turtle, I think. So I've had this turtle, lelijkert, which translates to the ugly one, for almost a year and a half now, and somebody asked for an update, and I also realized that I didn't really do a real update on this animal for a long time, while it's probably one of the most fun turtles I have. Now this one is absolutely not rare, although it's a vulnerable species in their natural range. They've been farmed by the absolute tens of millions in China and Taiwan, etc. But this animal is just so incredibly fun to keep. As you can see, when it sees me, all it thinks about is food. My other turtles also do that, of course, but this one is definitely yeah, very enthusiastic. So when I first got this turtle, I put it in a 54 liter setup. That was 60-30-30, but it was so active I soon put it in this setup, which is 120 centimeters long, 60 centimeters deep, and the water height is almost 30 centimeters, so that roughly translates to a little bit more than 200 liters in this setup. And as you can see, it has grown a lot in those like 12 months or a little bit more than 12 months, and it's gonna keep getting bigger and bigger. And with this high level of activity, this animal sure on the long term needs a bigger setup. Now this is a very hardy species, so I'm thinking about actually keeping this one outside during at least the summer in like 1,000 liters or 1,200 liters tub, because I don't heat this water at all. I do provide a basking spot, and I've touched on this before in previous videos about this animal, or at least during some other videos, but these turtles are actually often kept or sold, the same with Apollona spinifera and Apollona ferox, is that they are often sold to be kept together with like predatory fish, you know, big tanks with big aggressive fish. And then people like to add this odd turtle. Anyway, they are often put in a setup like that because they are almost fully aquatic, and a lot of people think they don't bask. But that's absolutely not true. Now, as you can see, I don't have a basking area or platform like with some of my other turtles, but there's definitely UV, there's a LED bar for natural daylight, and there is a basking spot. And you often, in the beginning of the day, see the animal like draped over the basking area like a molten piece of cheese, just hanging there, soaking up those rays, soaking up the UV also. And they definitely need a basking spot, because that soft shell is definitely more prone to damage. And if there's damage, if they are not able to completely dry and they don't have that UV light, there is a higher chance of something going wrong, some fungal stuff, some bacterial stuff, just overall healing not going so well. So that's why a basking platform, especially for soft shells like these, is very important. So you do need to add it, and you definitely see the animal use it. Anyway, it uses that basking spot, but that also means that if it can soak up that rays, I do not need to heat this water. So also when it's outside in the summer, if there's plenty of sunlight for this animal to bask under, and there's area for it to bask, then it definitely can be kept outside in the Netherlands where I live during the summer, maybe the end of spring, beginning of autumn, but of course during the winter I will put it back in. So one thing I was worried about, and I again mentioned in previous videos, is that this albino, and this is probably the case with a lot of albinos, I've also seen this with leopard geckos, etc., is that of course they are not as protected to bright lights as a normal animal with black eyes would be. And definitely in the beginning it seemed blind. It had a lot of trouble finding its food, or at least grabbing it at once. I was also able to keep a lot of fish with it, and it didn't really hunt them unless it swam, you know, close to its mouth and it could feel it. Now, because it's a little bit older now, you definitely can see that it learned to live with it, but you do still see the signs. So I was also a little bit hesitant with putting all this light above the animal. And that's the reason why I slowly added more and more light, and as you can see, it doesn't seem to bother it at all. it feeds perfectly. So that's all pretty well, but yeah, the eyesight is a little bit less. You can see it while it's foraging, and I did make sure that the intensity of the light wasn't too much, and as you can see, all this duckweed provides plenty of shade for the animal to actually get away from the bright light, and it works very well. As you can see, all it's do is following me, and sometimes when you tap the water, it opens its mouth in the hopes it gets something, but the yep, that was a reaction. Now, it's such a cool turtle. As you can see, it's super active. Now because it's seeing me, it's always to the front, but it's forward just through the whole setup the whole day. Now, because it's an albino, you can also see a little bit of algae growth, a little bit more obvious on like the paws and the back of the shell. If I maybe turn around, come. Here you can see on the edges a bit of algae. Sometimes I think about getting that off with a soft toothbrush, but it's not that bad, and I also often see it disappear again. And these turtles hate to be out of the water and touched. Because of that soft shell, of course they are way more vulnerable to predators. So it now is okay with me like stroking the shell when it's underwater, but above water it will react very defensively, and that's very logical because it can defend itself the same way as a turtle with a hard shell can. Like these Malremis, they just tuck in away in that hard shell and they are a bit more protected. While this one, of course, is very fragile compared to those. So they compensate with a very defensive behavior. They will try to slap you and scratch you with their strong paws. As you can see, it has some very obvious strong nails in the front over here. Everything is a little bit easier to see because it's an albino. You see some scales on the paw, but not a lot. And they will try to bite you, and they will have a very strong bite. And that neck is pretty long when you touch it, so they're not easy to hold on to, and they will try to grab you. So I would always advise, if you want to transport an animal like this, just make sure you have a box with a towel in there. Grab the animal, put it in there, move it that way. Do not hold it for any period of time if it's not needed. But yeah, you can see that little snorkel. That way they can take a breath without being noticed. Of course, this one is going to be noticed. Now, as you can see, it knows there's food, and it will bite at it, but it often misses, and that's because it doesn't have a great eyesight. Anyway, I feed it the reptile expert turtle pellets, worms, beef heart, pieces of fish, shrimp, mussel, pretty much everything that's like aquatic and can be eaten by a carnivore like this one. I add duckweed. I sometimes try to add a vegetable, piece of fruit, whatever, but it really doesn't eat on it. Maybe when it's a little bit older, but now definitely not. Now it seems to be that this is a female, so I don't know, it would be cool to breed this species, but I'm still having my doubts if I should get a male, because you can't put this turtle with other turtles. They are super territorial to other turtles, especially from the same species. Their mating also goes very rough, and you also often see, even with babies, if you go to like a reptile show which are being kept again, then you sometimes see all these softshell turtles together in a box, and then you see a lot of them have these cuts out of their shell, the edge. That's because they are kept in big amounts, and they will take a chunk out of the shell of somebody else. So that often happens, so definitely keep these separate. So sometimes I see them with other turtles, but I just can't believe they're going well. They are way too active, so they will cause a lot of stress to the other animals. They're super territorial, they will bite at everything, they're super fast, they will definitely chase other animals. So definitely in the way we can keep these animals in Europe, at least in my part of Europe, unless you maybe have a huge pond with a lot of visual barriers, it's not a good choice to keep these together with other turtles, especially just keep them separate. So yeah, that's also the reason why I may not eventually find a male, because well, this one needs a whole lot of space, an additional male also needs a whole lot of space, and breeding them in captivity is more just for the fun of it than really adding something, because they are again bred with absolutely tens of millions in farms, and big parts of those of course are used for their meat, but also some of those end up in our hobby. So breeding these as a hobbyist, it's fun, but it doesn't really add something to the species or their amount in captivity. So yeah, I think that's it when it comes to the update of the albino Chinese softshell turtle. Super cool turtles, just keep it separate, give them plenty of space. They do need a basking area, make sure the water is clean, and they will do pretty well. They are super fun turtles, very personable, and I see the battery is almost gone, so I'll see you later.